The handshake that changed everything. The gleaming hull of the Earth's flagship, the ESS Harmony, sliced through the inky void of space. Its destination, the mysterious world of Zephyria, home to an advanced alien civilization that had recently made contact with humanity. Inside the bridge, Captain Elena Reyes stood with her hands clasped behind her back, dark eyes fixed on the approaching orb of swirling purples and blues. "Entering Zephyrian orbit in 5 minutes, Captain," announced Lieutenant Zhang from his console. Elena nodded, her stomach churning with a mix of excitement and apprehension. At 38, she was one of Earth's most decorated space explorers, but this mission dwarfed anything she'd done before. The fate of humanity's first official diplomatic contact with an alien species rested on her shoulders. "Any final words of wisdom, Dr. Petal?" Elena asked, turning to the ship's xenobiologist. Dr. Amira Patel's eyes sparkled with barely contained enthusiasm. "Remember your training, Captain. We're here to build bridges, not burn them. The Zephyrians may look similar to us, but their biology and culture could be wildly different. Stay alert, stay respectful." As the Harmony began its descent towards the Zephyrian orbital station, Elena's mind raced through the scant information they had on their alien hosts. Humanoid in appearance, technologically advanced, and willing to engage in diplomacy. Beyond that, they were stepping into the unknown. The docking procedure went smoothly, and soon Elena led her small team through the airlock and onto the Zephyrian station. The architecture was a marvel of organic curves and crystalline structures that seemed to pulse with an inner light. A delegation of Zephyrians waited to greet them. Elena's breath caught in her throat as she took in their appearance. If not for their slightly larger, iridescent eyes and the faint, swirling patterns on their skin, they could have passed for human. "Welcome to Zephyria, Captain Reyes," said the lead Zephyrian in perfect English, her voice melodious. "I am Lyra, Chief of Interspecies Relations. We are honored by your presence." Elena bowed slightly. "The honor is ours, Chief Lyra. We come in peace and friendship, eager to learn about your people and culture." Lyra's lips curved in what Elena hoped was a smile. "Then let us begin with a tour of our station. There is much to discuss." As they walked, Elena noticed how the Zephyrians kept a careful distance from her team. She filed the observation away for later consideration. The tour concluded in a large conference room with sweeping views of both Zephyria and the Harmony. As Elena's team settled into their seats, a stern-faced Zephyrian entered, flanked by 2 others who looked like security. "Captain Reyes," Lyra said, "allow me to introduce Ambassador Zorn, who will be overseeing our negotiations." Zorn fixed Elena with an intense gaze. Despite his severe expression, Elena couldn't help but notice his striking features. He looked so human it was uncanny, save for the faint, swirling patterns on his skin that seemed to shift and dance in the light. "Ambassador," Elena said, rising to greet him, "it's an honor to." Before we proceed, Zorn interrupted, his voice sharp. "There are protocols you must understand. Chief among them, there is to be absolutely no physical contact between our species. Is that clear?" Elena blinked, taken aback by his brusque manner. "Of course, Ambassador. Though may I ask why?" "The reasons are not your concern," Zorn snapped. "Simply follow the protocol." An awkward silence fell over the room. Elena glanced at her team, seeing her own confusion mirrored in their faces. "Perhaps," Lyra interjected smoothly, "we should begin with a brief overview of our respective cultures to establish common ground." The next few hours passed in a flurry of information exchange. Elena found herself fascinated by Zephyrian society, their emphasis on collective consciousness, their advanced biotechnology, their deep connection to their planet's ecosystem. Yet throughout it all, Zorn remained cold and aloof, his responses clipped and often bordering on hostile. As the meeting drew to a close, Elena stood to address the room. "Thank you all for this illuminating discussion. I believe we've laid a strong foundation for future cooperation between our peoples." She turned to Zorn. "Ambassador, despite our rocky start, I hope we can move forward in a spirit of mutual respect and understanding. Without thinking, Elena extended her hand, a reflexive diplomatic gesture ingrained after years of negotiations. Several things happened at once. Lyra cried out, "No." Zorn's eyes widened in shock. And before Elena could process her mistake, her hand clasped Zorn's. A jolt like electricity surged through Elena's body. She saw Zorn's eyes roll back in his head as he crumpled to the floor. Chaos erupted in the conference room. Zephyrian security swarmed around Zorn's unconscious form. Lyra was shouting orders. Elena's team huddled around her protectively as Zephyrian guards advanced, weapons drawn. "What have you done?" Lyra's voice cut through the pandemonium. Her earlier friendliness evaporated. "You were expressly forbidden from physical contact." Elena's mind reeled. "I didn't mean to. It was an accident. Is he all right?" A groan from the floor drew everyone's attention. Zorn stirred, his eyes fluttering open. He sat up slowly, aided by his security team, and fixed Elena with a gaze of pure venom. "You fool," he hissed. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Before Elena could respond, another Zephyrian burst into the room. He conferred briefly with Lyra, who turned to Elena with an expression of mingled disgust and disbelief. "Captain Reyes," she said, her voice trembling with barely suppressed rage, "scans confirm that you have impregnated Ambassador Zorn." Elena's jaw dropped. "That's impossible. We only touched hands for a second." Which was more than enough time for a transfer of genetic material. Zorn spat, struggling to his feet. "Your human DNA has merged with mine. A new consciousness is already forming." Elena's head spun. This couldn't be happening. It had to be some kind of misunderstanding or mistranslation. "Please," he said, fighting to keep her voice steady, "there must be some mistake. Let's discuss this calmly and—" "There will be no more discussion." Lyra cut her off. "You and your team are confined to your quarters until we decide how to handle this violation. Guards, escort them out." As they were led away, Elena caught a final glimpse of Zorn. The hatred in his eyes chilled her to the bone. Whatever bridges she'd hoped to build between their species had just gone up in flames. Back in their quarters, Elena's team exploded into a frenzy of questions and recriminations. "How could you be so careless?" Dr. Patel demanded. "You're supposed to be our top diplomat." "It was an accident." Elena shot back, pacing the room like a caged animal. "A reflex. How was I supposed to know a simple handshake could cause whatever this is?" Lieutenant Zhang, ever the voice of reason, stepped between them. "Arguing won't solve anything. We need to figure out our next move. The mission's clearly in jeopardy, and if we're not careful, this could spiral into an interplanetary incident." Elena ran a hand through her hair, mind racing. "You're right. We need more information." She turned to Dr. Patel. "Amora, what do you make of this genetic transfer they mentioned?" Dr. Patel frowned, her scientific curiosity overtaking her earlier anger. "It's fascinating, really. Their biology must be radically different from ours to allow for such rapid genetic exchange. But without more data, I can't even begin to understand the mechanics of it." A chime at the door interrupted their discussion. A grim-faced Zephyrian guard entered, flanked by two others with weapons at the ready. "Captain Reyes," the guard announced, "your presence is required in the medical bay for examination. The rest of you will remain here under guard." Elena's team protested, but she waved them off. "It's all right. I'll go peacefully. Maybe we can sort this mess out." As she was led through the station's winding corridors, Elena's mind whirled with possible scenarios and diplomatic strategies. But nothing in her years of experience had prepared her for anything like this. The medical bay was a marvel of alien technology. Sleek machines hummed and pulsed with an otherworldly energy. In the center of it all stood Zorn, his face a mask of cold fury. "Lie down," he commanded, pointing to an examination table. Elena complied, her heart pounding. "Ambassador, please. Can we talk about this? There has to be a way to—" Silence. Zorn snapped. He turned to his Epherian doctor. Begin the scan. I want to know exactly what her human DNA is doing to my system. As the scan commenced, Elena felt a tingling sensation throughout her body. She watched as holographic displays sprang to life around her, showing swirling patterns of light she couldn't begin to interpret. The doctor's eyes widened as he studied the readouts. Fascinating, he murmured. The merger is progressing far more rapidly than anticipated. The new consciousness is already beginning to form neural pathways. Zorn's face paled. How is that possible? It's only been a few hours. It seems the human's genetic material is catalyzing the process in unexpected ways, the doctor replied. This hybrid entity, it could be unlike anything we've ever seen. Elena's head swam with the implications. Wait, are you saying that this child, or whatever it is, will be born soon? Zorn whirled on her, eyes blazing. This is not a child, it's an abomination, a threat to the purity of our species. Enough. A new voice rang out. Laura strode into the medical bay, her earlier diplomatic demeanor replaced by an aura of command. The High Council has made its decision. Captain Reyes, your reckless actions have placed our entire planet at risk. You and your team will be detained indefinitely while we determine how to proceed. Elena sat up, desperation clawing at her. Please be reasonable. This was an accident, not an act of aggression. Surely we can find a peaceful resolution. Laura's expression softened slightly. I understand this was unintentional, Captain, but intentions matter little in the face of potential catastrophe. The hybridization process you've initiated is unprecedented. Until we understand its full implications, we cannot risk further contamination. As Cypherian guards moved to escort her out, Elena locked eyes with Zorn. For a moment, she thought she saw a flicker of something beyond anger in his gaze. Fear, perhaps, or uncertainty. What will happen to him? Elena asked Lyra, nodding towards Zorn. That is no longer your concern, Lyra replied coldly. Guards, return the captain to her quarters. Full lockdown protocols are now in effect. As Elena was led away, her mind raced. She had come to Zephyria to forge a connection between their species. Instead, she had created one in a way she could never have imagined, and potentially doomed both their worlds in the process. The doors to her quarters hissed shut behind her, the ominous sound of multiple locks engaging. Her team looked up, hope fading from their eyes as they saw her grim expression. Well, Lieutenant Zhang asked, how bad is it? Elena sank into a chair, the weight of the situation crushing down on her. Bad, she said quietly. Very, very bad. As she recounted what had transpired in the medical bay, Elena couldn't shake the image of Zorn's face from her mind. Somewhere on this alien station, a new life was forming, a bridge between their species, but one that threatened to become a chasm instead. She had come to Zephyria to make history. Now, she feared she had set both their worlds on a collision course with disaster. Elena stood, determination hardening her resolve. We need a plan, she announced to her team. Whatever's happening inside Zorn, whatever this hybrid child turns out to be, it's our responsibility. We have to find a way to turn this crisis into an opportunity for understanding. The fate of both our worlds may depend on it. As her team huddled close, beginning to formulate strategies, Elena gazed out at the alien stars. The diplomatic catastrophe she had unwittingly triggered threatened to escalate into an interplanetary conflict. She had to do something, and fast. Little did she know, the greatest challenge, and the greatest hope for peace, was already growing within the body of a man who now saw her as his mortal enemy. The adventure had only just begun. Unexpected consequences, a hybrid child. The Zephyrian orbital station hummed with an undercurrent of tension. In her locked quarters, Captain Elena Reyes paced relentlessly, her mind a whirlwind of strategies and worst-case scenarios. It had been 72 hours since the fateful handshake that had changed everything. Captain, you need to rest, Dr. Amira Patel urged, concern etching her features. Elena shook her head, her eyes blazing with determination. How can I rest when we're on the brink of an interstellar incident? We need to find a way to communicate with Zorn to understand what's happening. As if in response to her words, a soft chime echoed through the room. A holographic message flickered to life, displaying an encrypted set of coordinates and a single word: "Come." Lieutenant Zhang frowned. It could be a trap. Or it could be our only chance, Elena countered. She turned to her team, her voice low and urgent. "I'm going, alone. If I'm not back in 2 hours, send a distress signal to Earth." Using a clever hack devised by Zhang, Elena slipped out of their quarters undetected. The station's corridors were eerily silent as she made her way to the designated meeting point, a secluded observation deck overlooking the swirling atmosphere of Zephyria. As she entered, a familiar figure emerged from the shadows. Zorn. Elena's breath caught in her throat. The ambassador's usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, his iridescent eyes wild with a mix of fear and something else. "You came," he said, his voice a hoarse whisper. Elena nodded cautiously. "You asked me to." "Zorn, what's going on? Are you all right?" He laughed, a bitter sound. "All right? I'm carrying an abomination inside me, a hybrid that threatens the very fabric of our society. And yet," he trailed off, his hand moving unconsciously to rest on his abdomen. "And yet," Elena prompted gently. Zorn's eyes met hers, filled with conflicting emotions. "I can feel it. The child, its consciousness is extraordinary, unlike anything I've ever experienced." Elena took a tentative step forward. "Tell me." As Zorn began to describe the sensations, the room around them seemed to fade away. He spoke of colors beyond imagination, of thoughts that transcended language, of a being that somehow bridged the vast gulf between their species. "It's not just Zephyrian, not just humans," Zorn murmured. "It's more, as if it can see patterns in the universe that neither of our races can comprehend alone." Elena listened, awestruck. "Zorn, don't you see? This child isn't a threat. It's an opportunity. A chance for true understanding between our peoples." Before Zorn could respond, he doubled over with a gasp of pain. "It's growing too fast. The doctors say I have days, maybe hours before." Alarm shot through Elena. "Before what?" "Zorn, what aren't you telling me?" His eyes met hers, filled with a vulnerability that shocked her. "The birth will kill me. My body wasn't designed for this. But the child, it must survive. Promise me, Elena. Promise me you'll protect it." The use of her first name, the raw emotion in his voice, hit Elena like a physical blow. She reached out instinctively, stopping just short of touching him. "I promise. But there has to be another way. Let me help you." A sad smile played on Zorn's lips. "Perhaps this is the price of progress. A life for a life." Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the station. Zorn's eyes widened in panic. "They know I'm here. You have to go. Now." Elena hesitated, torn between her duty and the inexplicable connection she felt to Zorn and the child he carried. "I won't leave you." "You must," Zorn insisted, already pushing her towards a hidden panel in the wall. "For the sake of both our worlds, for the future this child represents, you must survive." As the sound of approaching guards grew louder, Elena made a split-second decision. She pulled a small device from her pocket, a subspace communicator, and pressed it into Zorn's hand. "Contact me. We'll find a way." With a final, anguished look, Elena slipped into the hidden passage. As the panel slid shut behind her, she heard the observation deck doors burst open and Zorn's voice, once again cold and imperious, denouncing her presence. Elena's heart raced as she navigated the cramped maintenance tunnels, her mind reeling from the encounter. She had come to this station to forge diplomatic ties. Instead, she found herself embroiled in a conspiracy that could reshape the future of two civilizations. When she finally made it back to her quarters, her team bombarded her with questions. Elena held up a hand, silencing them. Everything's changed, she said, her voice filled with a mix of fear and wonder. The child Zorn is carrying, it's not just a hybrid. It might be the key to unlocking the secrets of the universe itself. Dr. Patel's eyes widened. Captain, what are you saying? Elena took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. I'm saying that we have a choice to make. We can play it safe, follow protocol, and potentially lose the greatest opportunity for advancement our species has ever encountered. Or, Lieutenant Zhang prompted. A fierce light blazed in Elena's eyes. Or we can take a leap of faith. We can fight for this child, for the future it represents. It won't be easy. We'll be going against not just the Zephyrian High Council, but likely our own government as well. But if we succeed, we could usher in a new era of interstellar cooperation and discovery. A heavy silence fell over the room as her words sank in. Finally, Dr. Patel spoke up. I became a xenobiologist to explore the unknown, to push the boundaries of what we thought possible. I'm in. Zhang nodded sullenly. Where you go, Captain, we follow. Elena felt a surge of pride and affection for her team. Thank you. Now, let's get to work. We have a birth to plan, a rescue to orchestrate, and possibly an interstellar war to prevent. As they huddled together, formulating plans and contingencies, Elena's hand drifted unconsciously to her abdomen. Though the child grew within Zorn, she felt a profound connection to it, a sense of responsibility that transcended biology. Little did they know, light years away on Earth, urgent messages were already being dispatched. The news of Elena's diplomatic incident had reached the highest levels of government, and not everyone saw the potential of this hybrid child as a blessing. As the Zephyrian sun set, casting the station in an ethereal glow, forces beyond Elena's control were being set in motion. The race to determine the fate of the galaxy's first human Zephyrian hybrid had begun. And at the heart of it all, growing stronger by the hour, was a child whose very existence would challenge everything both species thought they knew about the universe and their place within it. The next 48 hours would determine not just the fate of two worlds, but the very course of galactic history. Diplomatic crisis. Worlds on the brink. The Earth's interstellar command center buzzed with frantic activity. Admiral Cora Chen, a battle-hardened veteran with eyes like steel, stared at the holographic display before her. The image showed the Zephyrian orbital station, a glowing dot against the alien world's swirling atmosphere. Repeat that, Johnson. You're telling me Captain Reyes did what? The nervous liaison officer swallowed hard. She inadvertently impregnated the Zephyrian ambassador Mayhem through a handshake. A ripple of disbelief swept through the command center. Admiral Chen pinched the bridge of her nose, feeling a migraine coming on. And now we have a hybrid child growing at an accelerated rate inside an alien diplomat. A child that could be the greatest scientific discovery in human history, or the catalyst for interstellar war. Yes, ma'am. Chen's eyes narrowed. What's the Zephyrian response been so far? Radio silence, Admiral. Our diplomatic channels have gone dark, but we're picking up increased activity around their military installations. It doesn't look good. The Admiral's jaw clenched. Prep the fleet. I want every ship we have on high alert, and get me a secure line to the President. We need to decide our next move before. An alarm blared, cutting her off. A junior officer called out, panic in his voice. Admiral, we're detecting a massive energy surge from the Zephyrian homeworld. It's like nothing we've ever seen before. On the main view screen, a blinding flash erupted from Zephyria's surface. A shimmering, iridescent field began to expand, enveloping the entire planet and its orbital stations. What in the name of Einstein's ghost is that? Chen breathed. Dr. Elara Voss, Earth's leading xenophysicist, stepped forward, her eyes wide with awe. It appears to be some kind of quantum barrier, Admiral. If I'm reading these readings correctly, it's phase-shifting the entire Zephyrian star system out of our dimension. A stunned silence fell over the command center. Are you telling me? Chen said slowly, but the Zephyrians are trying to disappear their entire civilization to avoid dealing with this hybrid child situation. Dr. Voss nodded grimly. That's exactly what I'm saying. And Captain Reyes and her team are trapped on the other side. The Admiral's expression hardened. Like hell they are. Johnson, get me every ounce of data we have on that barrier. Voss, I want theories on how to breach it. And somebody wake up every quantum physicist on the planet. We're not losing an entire alien civilization, or our people, without a fight. As the command center erupted into renewed activity, Chen turned back to the view screen. The shimmering barrier pulsed with otherworldly energy, a silent challenge to humanity's determination and ingenuity. Hold on, Reyes, she murmured. We're coming for you. Meanwhile, on the other side of the quantum barrier, chaos reigned on the Zephyrian orbital station. Elena Reyes and her team huddled in their quarters, watching in disbelief as the familiar stars outside their viewport were replaced by a swirling prismatic void. What have they done? Dr. Patel whispered, her voice trembling. Elena's mind raced. They're trying to isolate themselves, to prevent the hybrid child from having any contact with humanity. Lieutenant Zhang's eyes narrowed, or to prevent us from interfering with whatever they plan to do with it. A chill ran down Elena's spine. She thought of Zorn, of the vulnerability she'd seen in his eyes, of the extraordinary consciousness growing within him. We can't let that happen. We need to find Zorn now. As if summoned by her words, the hidden communicator Zorn had given her crackled to life. His voice came through, strained and breathless. Elena, the child, it's coming. But something's wrong. The High Council they're going to. The transmission cut off abruptly. Elena's heart pounded. She turned to her team, determination blazing in her eyes. This is it. Our window is closing. Are you with me? Dr. Patel and Lieutenant Zhang nodded grimly. Then let's go save the future of two worlds. Using the station schematics they'd memorized, the team slipped out of their quarters and into the chaos of the panicking station. Alarms blared, Zephyrian civilians rushed through the corridors, and security forces struggled to maintain order. As they made their way towards the medical bay, Elena's mind whirled with possibilities. The child was coming, a being of unprecedented potential, a bridge between two species that could reshape the galaxy. But would it be seen as a miracle or a threat? They rounded a corner and came face to face with a squad of Zephyrian guards. For a heartbeat, time seemed to freeze. Then all hell broke loose. Zhang moved with lightning speed, disarming the lead guard and using him as a shield. Patel, usually the picture of scientific calm, revealed a surprising proficiency with hand-to-hand combat. Elena vaulted over a fallen guard, her years of zero-key training paying off as she maneuvered in the station's artificial gravity. Go, she shouted to her team. Get to the medical bay. I'll hold them off. As Patel and Zhang sprinted ahead, Elena found herself in a standoff with the remaining guards. She raised her hands slowly, a disarming smile on her face. Gentlemen, surely we can discuss this like civilized. A blast of energy sizzled past her ear, cutting off her attempt at diplomacy. Right then, Elena muttered, "The hard way it is." What followed was a display of acrobatics and quick thinking that would have made her combat instructors proud. Elena used the station's architecture to her advantage, vaulting over railings, sliding under closing bulkheads, and at one point using a surprised Zephyrian civilian as an impromptu springboard. Finally, breathless and sporting a few minor burns from near misses, Elena arrived at the medical bay. The scene inside made her blood run cold. Zorn lay on a central bio-bed, his body racked with spasms of pain. Around him, Zephyrian doctors worked feverishly, their expressions a mix of fascination and fear. And looming over it all was High Counselor Vex, his eyes glinting with fanatical zeal. The abomination must not be allowed to live, Vex was saying. For the purity of our species, for the safety of our world, we must. Stop. Elena's voice rang out, halting everyone in their tracks. That child is not just Zephyrian, it's part human, and as a representative of Earth, I will not allow you to harm it. Vex's face contorted with rage. You dare. You, who brought this contamination upon us. Guards, seize her. But before anyone could move, a blinding light erupted from Zorn's body. A sound like crystal chimes and distant thunder filled the air. Everyone in the room was frozen in place, captivated by the unfolding miracle. From the light emerged a figure, small, delicate, yet radiating power beyond comprehension. The hybrid child had arrived. As the glow faded, Elena found herself staring into eyes that swirled with the colors of distant nebulae. The child, neither fully human nor Zephyrian, gazed back at her with an intelligence that seemed to span millennia. And then it spoke, its voice resonating not just in the air, but in the minds of everyone present. Why do you fear what you do not understand? I am not your enemy. I am your future. The medical bay fell silent, the weight of cosmic potential hanging in the air. Elena's heart soared with a mixture of awe and hope. This was it, the moment that would define the future of both their species. As she stepped forward to greet this new being, she knew that nothing in the universe would ever be the same again. The next moves they made would determine the fate of not just two worlds, but the entire galactic community. And at the center of it all was a child born of two species, a living bridge across the stars. The greatest adventure in human and Zephyrian history was about to unfold. The power of understanding, a child's gift. The hybrid child hovered in midair, its form shimmering with an otherworldly aura. The assembled Zephyrians and humans stood transfixed, their minds struggling to comprehend the being before them. I am Zara, the child spoke, its voice echoing both audibly and telepathically. I am the synthesis of your species, the bridge between worlds. High Counselor Vex, recovering from his shock, stepped forward. This is an abomination. It must be contained, studied, controlled. Zara turned its gaze upon Vex, and the High Counselor stumbled back, overwhelmed by the cosmic awareness in those eyes. Your fear blinds you, Zara said softly. Let me show you what could be. With a gesture, the hybrid child created a shimmering portal in the air. Through it, Elena and the others glimpsed visions of a future beyond their wildest dreams. Vast cities that blended Zephyrian bioarchitecture with human innovation, stretching across planets and even into the fabric of space itself. Scientists of both species working together, unlocking the secrets of dark matter and harnessing the power of quantum realms. Fleets of starships, more advanced than anything currently imagined, exploring the farthest reaches of the universe. A galactic council chamber where humans and Zephyrians sat side by side with a myriad of other alien species, united in pursuit of knowledge and peace. As the visions faded, Zara spoke again. This is but a fraction of what we could achieve together. The barriers between us are illusions. In the grand tapestry of the cosmos, we are all interconnected. Elena, her heart pounding with excitement and hope, stepped forward. Zara, how is this possible? How can we make this future a reality? The hybrid child smiled, an expression of infinite wisdom on its young face. The key lies within each of you, the very thing that allowed my creation. The ability for your species to connect on a genetic level is merely the first step. Your minds, your spirits are capable of so much more. Zara floated to the center of the room, spreading its arms wide. Tendrils of ethereal energy began to emanate from its form, reaching out to touch each person present. Let me show you, Zara whispered. In that moment, every mind in the room was linked in a vast neural network. Thoughts, memories, and emotions flowed freely between humans and Zephyrians. Centuries of cultural misunderstandings dissolved in seconds. The fears, hopes, and dreams of both species merged into a symphony of shared consciousness. Elena gasped as she felt the artistry of Zephyrian collective thinking blend with the fierce individuality of human cognition. She sensed Zorn's initial disgust at the idea of carrying a hybrid child transform into a profound love and sense of purpose. Even High Counselor Vex, his mind opened to new possibilities, began to see the potential that lay before them. As the connection faded, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. The barriers that had seemed so insurmountable mere moments ago now felt trivial and absurd. Zara, its energy diminished but its presence, no less powerful, spoke once more. This is only the beginning. The gift I offer is not just for those in this room, but for all of our peoples. Will you accept it? Elena, tears streaming down her face, nodded. Yes, she said, her voice choked with emotion. 1,000 times, yes. Zorn, still weak from the birth, but filled with a new sense of purpose, stood shakily. As do I, on behalf of Zephyria. High Counselor Vex, his earlier zealotry replaced by a look of wonder, bowed his head. We were fools to fear this. Zephyria accepts your gift, young one. Zara smiled, a look of pure joy illuminating its features. Then let us begin. What followed was a flurry of activity unlike anything either world had ever seen. The quantum barrier around Zephyria was dissolved, revealing the planet once more to the watchful eyes of Earth's fleet. Emergency diplomatic channels were opened between the highest levels of both governments, with Zara serving as a living universal translator. Scientists from both species began working around the clock to understand and replicate the genetic compatibility that had allowed Zara's creation. Plans were drawn up for a massive space station to be constructed in neutral territory, serving as a joint research center and cultural exchange hub. But perhaps most importantly, Zara began to share its gift of mental connection with others. Small groups at first, then entire cities, and finally, whole continents of both humans and Zephyrians experienced the profound unity of thought that the hybrid child could facilitate. It wasn't always easy. Centuries of ingrained prejudices and fears didn't disappear overnight. There were those on both sides who resisted, who clung to old hatreds and suspicions. But with each passing day, more and more people embraced the new reality. 6 months after Zara's birth, Elena stood on the observation deck of the newly christened Unity Station, a massive structure hanging in space between Earth and Zephyria. Beside her stood Zorn, no longer an adversary, but a trusted friend and co-administrator of this bold new venture. Did you ever imagine it would turn out like this? Zorn asked, his voice filled with quiet awe as they watched shuttles from both worlds dock at the station. Elena shook her head, a smile playing on her lips. Never in a million years, but I wouldn't change a thing. A soft chime announced a new arrival. They turned to see Zara float into the room, its form now resembling a young adolescent, but still shimmering with otherworldly energy. Are you ready? Zara asked, excitement evident in its voice. The first joint expedition to the Andromeda Galaxy is about to depart. As they made their way to the launching bay, Elena's heart swelled with pride and anticipation. A fleet of ships, their hulls gleaming with the combined brilliance of human and Zephyrian technology, stood ready to make history. She thought back to that fateful handshake, to the fear and confusion that had followed. How could she have known that a simple diplomatic gesture would lead to this, the dawn of a new age of galactic exploration and cooperation? As the countdown began and the ships prepared to jump to faster-than-light speed, Elena realized that they were all, in a sense, newborns in this brave new universe. The adventure that had begun with an accidental touch was now expanding to the farthest reaches of the cosmos. And this, Elena knew, was only the beginning. A new era, bridging two worlds. The quantum-entangled holoscreen flickered to life in billions of homes across Earth and Zephyria simultaneously. The most-watched broadcast in the history of both civilizations was about to begin. Elena Reyes, now sporting the insignia of Earth's first interspecies ambassador, stood beside Zorn, who had taken on a similar role for Zephyria. Between them, Zara hovered, its form now resembling a young adult, but still pulsing with ethereal energy. Citizens of Earth and Zephyria, Elena began, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. Today marks the 5th anniversary of first contact and the birth of Zara. In these 5 years, we have seen changes beyond our wildest imaginations. Zorn continued, his once cold demeanor now warm and engaging. We stand on the brink of a new era. An era of unprecedented cooperation, discovery, and growth. But it has not been without its challenges. The broadcast cut to footage of protests on both worlds, humans and Zephyrians alike who feared the rapid changes, who clung to old prejudices and isolationist ideologies. Change is never easy, Zara spoke, its voice resonating with compassion. Fear of the unknown is a trait our species share, but it is in overcoming that fear that we find our greatest strength. The screen split, showing side-by-side images of human and Zephyrian scientists working together in advanced laboratories, of children from both species playing in zero-gravity parks, of joint military exercises where once enemies now trained as allies. 5 years ago, a simple handshake changed the course of our histories, Elena said, a hint of wonder still in her voice. Today, we invite you all to take the next step with us. Zorn nodded solemnly. What we propose may seem radical, even frightening to some, but we ask you to approach it with open minds and open hearts. Zara floated forward, its eyes shimmering with the wisdom of ages. The gift of mental connection I shared with some, we now offer to all. A global network of consciousness, linking every willing mind on both our worlds. Gasps could be heard from the live audiences on both planets. This was beyond anything that had been publicly discussed before. Imagine, Elena continued, her eyes alight with possibility, a world where misunderstandings between cultures become a thing of the past, where language barriers dissolve, where knowledge can be shared instantaneously across light years. A civilization, Zorn added, where the collective wisdom of two species can be brought to bear on the greatest challenges we face, from curing diseases to unlocking the secrets of dark energy. Zara raised its hands, and a shimmering holographic model of the proposed neural network appeared. Participation will be entirely voluntary. Privacy protocols will be strictly enforced. This is not about losing our individuality, but about enhancing our connection to one another and to the cosmos itself. The broadcast continued, delving into the technical details, the safeguards, the potential benefits and risks. But across two worlds, billions of minds were already racing with the implications. In a small apartment in New Beijing, Dr. Yuki Chen, a quantum physicist, felt her heart race with excitement. The potential for scientific advancement was staggering. In a biodome on Zephyria's southern continent, Lyra, a young artist, saw visions of colors and concepts humans had no words for, yet might soon experience. On a farm in Iowa, John Baker scratched his head, unsure about this new development but undeniably curious about what a Zephyrian's thoughts might be like. As the broadcast concluded, Elena, Zorn, and Zara stood united, extending a symbolic hand to the camera. "The choice is yours," they said in unison. "To remain as we are, or to take this leap together into a future limited only by our collective imagination." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across both planets, acceptance rates soared. There were holdouts, of course, and respect for their choice was emphasized repeatedly, but the tide of history was undeniable. 1 week later, at a precisely coordinated moment, Zara activated the global neural link. The experience defied description. Billions of minds, human and Zephyrian, suddenly interconnected in a vast cosmic web of thought and emotion. Barriers of language, culture, and biology melted away in an instant. Scientists found themselves solving complex equations with newfound insight. Artists experienced explosions of creativity, blending styles and concepts from two worlds. Diplomats understood decades-old conflicts with perfect clarity, paving the way for lasting peace. But it was more than just an exchange of information. There was a profound sense of unity, of belonging to something greater than oneself, yet without losing individual identity. Humans felt the deep spiritual connection to the living world that Zephyrians had evolved over millennia. Zephyrians experienced the fierce individuality and drive for personal achievement that had propelled human innovation. As the initial overwhelming sensations settled into a comfortable background hum, Elena found herself standing on the observation deck of Unity Station once more. Tears streamed down her face as she watched the glittering lights of ships and stations orbiting both Earth and Zephyria. Zorn appeared beside her, his own eyes glistening with emotion. Without a word, they embraced, no longer alien to one another, but family in the truest sense. Zara materialized, its form now more energy than matter. "It is done," it said simply, joy radiating from its being. "The bridge is built." Elena nodded, her mind still reeling from the cosmic connection she now felt. "What happens next?" she asked, though she could sense the answer forming in the collective consciousness. Zara smiled, gesturing to the star-filled viewport. "We explore, we grow, we become more than we ever dreamed possible." As if in response, a massive ship unlike anything ever seen before decloaked in the space between Earth and Zephyria. It was a perfect blend of both species' technology, designed to travel faster and farther than any vessel in history. The Cosmic Explorer, Zorn breathed, the name coming to him through the neural link. Our first true joint venture into the unknown. Elena felt a swell of anticipation, not just her own but echoed across billions of minds. "Where will we go?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Zara's form pulsed with excitement. "Everywhere." As the Cosmic Explorer prepared for its maiden voyage, Elena reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From a diplomatic mission gone awry to the brink of interstellar war, and now to the dawn of a new age of unity and exploration. She thought of that first fateful handshake with Zorn. How could she have known that such a simple gesture would lead to this, the merging of two civilizations, the birth of a hybrid child who would change everything, and now a future brighter than either species had ever imagined? As the engines of the Cosmic Explorer rolled to life, Elena felt the exhilaration of billions of minds joined with her own. They were no longer just humans or Zephyrians. They were pioneers of a new kind of civilization, embarking on the greatest adventure in the history of the cosmos. The stars beckoned, promising wonders beyond imagination, and together, united in mind and spirit, they would answer that call. The next chapter of their incredible journey was about to begin.